Today on the program, a California church had been fined $3.8 million by the state of California for holding church services in violation of state demands to close. But the church just won a big victory in court. Their pastor will join us with an update today. In addition, the Minneapolis School Board and Teachers Union have reached an agreement that if any teachers need to be let go, they will fire the white teachers first. Seriously. More about this shocking story later in the program. In addition, what should you be aware of as you send your children back to school? Tiffany Justice from Moms for Liberty will join us for that conversation on the program as well. But the headlines today: it's now been 10 days since the FBI raid of former President Trump's residence in Florida. Despite public comments from Attorney General Merrick Garland last week, many questions still remain regarding the necessity and scope of the investigation. The Department of Justice released the search warrant that was used for the search, but former President Trump has called for the immediate release of the affidavit used to get the warrant, which the Justice Department has so far opposed. Tomorrow, a magistrate judge will hold a hearing to decide whether to unseal more documents, up to and possibly including the affidavit. With me now to discuss this is U.S. Representative Dan Bishop, who's a member of the House Judiciary Committee and the Homeland Security Committee. He represents the 9th Congressional District of North Carolina. Congressman Bishop, good to see you today.
Hey, Joseph, good to be with you again.
Now, we haven't had the chance to talk about any of this yet, so what are your reflections, your thoughts on the initial raid, the Justice Department's response since then, what we've learned about how all of this has been done?
Joseph, my view is that it signals an FBI and a DOJ that are wildly off track, that have become something Americans do not recognize. And I think they have destroyed in a single strike the credibility built up by the Justice Department and FBI over many years. So that's my general impression. On this latest thing about the judge being asked to release the affidavit, it is common, notwithstanding that there's a First Amendment right of access for the public to court records of certain types. It is common for the courts to withhold warrants and affidavits while a criminal investigation is still ongoing. But in this case, with the FBI kind of having gone halfway and sought the release of the warrant, I think it's going to be hard for them to sustain a reasonable showing that at this point it is appropriate, especially under the unique public interest circumstances of this matter, to withhold the affidavit in support of the warrant. And I think the American people need to see it. I believe the only answer to where we've gotten to, where the FBI has taken us, where the DOJ has taken us, is transparency, sunlight, because I see nothing that is even hinted at so far that would justify the FBI having conducted a criminal raid on the former president of the United States for a matter that easily could have been resolved through civil process.
Your colleague, Representative Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania, is himself a former FBI agent. He said there's an assumption that this document would be released, referring to this affidavit, that it would be released in the interest of transparency. Here's what he said. Let's play clip 5.
The real story will be with the release of the affidavit itself, which is not currently planned to be released. It is filed under seal. The prosecution does have to repeatedly go back to the court and ask that it remain under seal. There is a baseline presumption that that document be released to the public in the interest of transparency. That's what's going to tell us really what most of us want to know.
Representative Bishop, does that give you confidence that the public is ultimately going to get a chance to see this?
Well, I have no doubt, Joseph, that at some point in time, the public will be allowed to see it. And I don't disagree with Representative Fitzpatrick as to the fact that the baseline, as he put it, is that all public access exists to all these documents, but it's a question of timing. And if the FBI makes a showing of significance that there's interest of the grand jury secrecy or witness cooperation, I believe is what they've cited, that is jeopardized if there's a release, then ordinarily, in the ordinary course, at this point in a criminal investigation, it wouldn't be released. But again, this is no ordinary case, Joseph.
Yeah. It certainly is not an ordinary case. Is there anything that Congress can do with congressional oversight to expedite this process, or are we at this point we're just waiting on the discretion of the Justice Department and perhaps the magistrate?
Well, as you know, I serve on the Judiciary Committee with Ranking Member Jim Jordan, but it's Jerry Nadler and the Democrats in the majority. We've said Jim Jordan has called for Merrick Garland to be in front of our committee explaining what the DOJ is thinking here the Friday after that warrant was served. But I don't think Jerry Nadler is going to do that. What we need in order to exercise, I do believe that we have to exercise historically unprecedented oversight over the Justice Department, because they're taking steps that are historically unprecedented in ways that are of great concern for the administration of fair and neutral justice. American people are getting fed up with the dual standard of justice, with apparently politicized justice. And I can tell you one thing: in a Republican majority, we're going to get to the heart of it, get to all the information about what's been going on with the Whitmer kidnapping, with January 6th, with this activity toward President Trump, and many other things.
It does seem likely that those questions will be asked, but it's a matter of whether it's before November or after November, and perhaps we're going to wait till afterwards. Now, Congressman, I want to switch gears with you a bit, because President Biden finally got to sign his sweeping tax bill, which he is referring to as the Inflation Reduction Act. Here's how he described the bill.
The bill I'm about to sign is not just about today, it's about tomorrow. It's about delivering progress and prosperity to American families.
How do you think it's going to impact the American public?
Wow, he is so clueless. It is unbelievable. He is utterly out of touch. Everyone, left and right, Bernie Sanders, everybody agrees that this bill has no capacity, this law has no capacity to reduce inflation. It's going to make inflation worse by a lot more federal spending. It's going to promote the likelihood of a recession by greater tax burden on the economy, on manufacturers, on energy production. It's like you see, the man's drowning in the ocean, you throw him an anchor. That's what, like, the American people are trying to survive the inflation and the supply chain difficulties, and nobody wants to work. And he's waving them bye-bye. That's all President Biden has done. This is a terrible bill. Terrible bill.
Well, not everyone seems disappointed by it. Your colleague, Representative Raskin, who's a Democrat from Maryland, was hinted that the bill has already reduced inflation, but he didn't have a great response as to why. Let's play clip 4.
I note that those who've been blaming President Biden for the inflation going up are now giving President Biden all the credit for inflation going down. So we're moving things in the right direction already.
Yeah, and what parts of the bill do you think will quickly work on that specifically?
Next question.
Does he have not a good answer to that because there is no part of the bill that leads to inflation reduction?
That's one of the best clips I've seen in a long time. That's Jamie Raskin to the core. He likes to pontificate, but he's not willing to answer questions. If you're not willing to take the hard questions and answer them, you're not worth your salt. And Jamie's a radical. This gets it. What he's delighted about is this bill soothes the desire of the left for radical ideology to be front and center on the climate and so forth. The last thing they're concerned about is the well-being of the American people at their family dinner table, and how they put food on that table, and how they take care of their kids and meet their family budgets.
What should the federal government be doing to improve the economic situation for families?
Restore the soundness of the American currency. We should be cutting taxes. We should be unleashing the American energy sector in order to bring prices down. We should be doing everything we can to cut regulation so that they get government out of the way of the economy producing goods and services, so that you're not seeing supply constraints that also contribute to inflation. I mean, it's very simple. Ronald Reagan did it in 1981-82 and launched the biggest peacetime recovery in American history at the time. And it continued for over 25 years, Joseph. We could do that again, but instead, the ideologues are in control, and they're just thumbing their nose at the American people's plight.
Congressman Bishop, one other topic. The July report from the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol states that border apprehensions this year are at a new record of more than 2 million people just this year. For context, there are 12 states, 12 of the 50 states have a population of less than 2 million people. This is a big number of people who have come into the country illegally this year. Is this going to get the administration's attention so that they might be deciding to do something different?
That is the $64,000 question. I guess the answer would have to be no. We've seen month after month after month of astonishing record levels of irregular migration across the southwestern border. Nothing has prompted. In fact, all you've seen from the Department of Homeland Security, from Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, is denial, an insistence that our border is secure, that everything is working as it should be. I mean, it's just, I think, another case of being out of touch, or, I mean, there's an extreme, again, ideological commitment to open borders policies across the world that the left has. They think the United States is better served by having any number of people who want to come here get in and no process at all. I think it's killing migrants right and left. It's horrible for them. It's horrible for the American people.
And it's not just killing migrants. One of the other data points from July, 2,071 pounds of fentanyl were seized at the border. That, of course, begs the question, how many thousands of pounds of fentanyl were not seized at the border? What do you think it would take for the Biden administration to change the policy to deal with what we're seeing there?
And Joseph, record drug deaths in the United States, 100,000, the leading cause of death among young people. I really don't know. One of the things that's been most interesting from last year when Glenn Youngkin won in Virginia is to see that Democrats have not moderated, have not reconsidered the radical path that they've been on. Instead, they have at every point have doubled down, and that's where we are on the border. That's where we are on the implications for drug, people suffering drug overdose deaths in the United States. They just don't seem to want to turn and recognize that they're driving the American people into the ditch.
That does seem to be the case, and we'll see how the voters respond to it this November. Congressman Dan Bishop, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Joseph.